I am very pleased to speak on the report by the NDIS committee, and I commend the work that they're doing in a bipartisan way to address the significant issues that people are facing with the scheme. When it's working, the NDIS is working really well. When it's not, it is taking a horrific toll on people, participants and carers alike. And I do note, though, that a bit over a decade ago we wouldn't have been having these sorts of discussions because the NDIS didn't exist. Its existence does give us hope that we can make things better, not just for some people with a disability, but for every person with a disability. And I want to preface my remarks on the report today by acknowledging that it is the International Day of People with a Disability. And that is really a day about 20% of the population, because 1 in 5 Australians identifies as having a disability. The theme of this year's Day of Disability, People with Disability, is Build Back Better. And having just come from the morning tea in Parliament House, organised by the Shadow Disability Minister, Bill Shorten, and by the Chair of the committee on whose report we're speaking today, Kevin Andrews, it was really terrific to be able to acknowledge the contribution that people with a disability and their carers make, that the role they have, the respect they deserve and the dignity that they should be receiving. And I think this report does go to that, ensuring that people are treated with dignity as we hopefully build back better from what we have seen in 2020. And the point was made at the event that things did get tougher for people with disabilities and their carers during COVID. But Canberra disability advocate Dougie Hurd actually voiced thoughts in the room when he said that the restrictions that we had experienced during COVID was something that many people with a disability routinely experience, the separation, the restriction of lifestyle, which is why it is so important that we do heed the words of the theme of this year's International Day of People with Disability and do strive to build back better. And I think in the wake of what the Royal Commission into Disability raised about the serious failure of the government to consult with the disability community during the COVID-19 and their response to it gives us even more reason to address those concerns. The Commission did find that there was a lack of consideration for people with a disability, including the absence of a plan for testing the availability and delivering personal protective equipment to them and their support staff, and they recognised how much extreme stress that caused people, among a whole lot of other issues. So I think it's very clear people with a disability don't want things to go back to where they were pre-COVID. They want and they deserve for things to be better, and that's what this report is really about. It's really about looking at where the NDIS has come from, where it is now, the problems that it has, the things that are broken within it, the things that are simply not working for far too many people. And the evidence given to the inquiry matches much of what I hear in my own electorate of Macquarie. My office continues to be one of the most active, I'm told, in raising issues with the National Disability Insurance Agency, and that's because not only do I have a deep commitment to making sure the NDIS works, but my team has that commitment, and Kim in particular in my office is the person that people speak to first about the problems they're facing. And she hears firsthand the distress and the experiences that they're going through. We don't want to get those phone calls. We want to make sure that everybody is experiencing the NDIS the way it was intended, as a just and fair process where they're treated with respect and dignity. The key theme of this report is around planning, and I have to say that is one of the biggest issues that is raised with us. In a survey that I've commenced and have had dozens and dozens of responses to so far, identifying what people are finding as the biggest issues right now, planning is right up there. I'm seeing people at breaking point in the lead up to their plans or their child's plan being redetermined. They are beside themselves trying to get together the paperwork, the documentation, then they're asked for more documentation. Now this matches the evidence that this inquiry heard and matches some of the recommendations that have made, and in fact the I really welcome the 42 recommendations in this report, plus the 14 from the interim report. I think that level of recommendations from a bipartisan committee shows you that there are serious things to be addressed. One of the other things that is touched on, and I know there'll be more work to do for the committee, is around independent assessments. My survey certainly shows that that is one of the greatest fears for the future that people have. There's been very poor consultation about it, and people have a genuine concern that the whole purpose of independent assessments is to reduce the amount of funding that they receive as a participant or that their child receives as a participant. They think it's going to be about taking away supports, and nothing they have been told has reassured them otherwise. They wonder how a conversation with one person they've never met before for between 1 and maybe 4 hours is going to paint the full picture of what they or their child needs, and why the reports that they have been used to getting aren't sufficient evidence to show what their needs are. And I want to come to some of the recommendations about those reports, because this inquiry and the report of the committee touches on so many issues. The inconsistency of plans. You only need to have two mums talking together about their child, each of their children with different but not dissimilar needs, to see that there's massive inconsistency. And I think what worries me most is in some ways, not the conversations I have with mums, but the mums who aren't talking to me, the mums who have just walked away from the National Disability Insurance Scheme because it's just too hard to navigate. And I hope the implementation, and that the government will consider implementing some of these recommendations, in fact all of them, so that that doesn't occur. Planner errors come up time and time again. You know, simple things like the form having the wrong disability articulated on it. Now, I get the huge workload that planners have. The workforce issue is another key area to be looked at, and I note that the committee is aware of that. The way the planners who go above and beyond are delivering terrific plans to children and to adult participants in the scheme. But one of the things we've seen, for instance, during COVID, is the concern that because money couldn't be spent during COVID, that unspent money is going to be taken away. And it really doesn't matter how often governments say that won't happen. When your review date comes up, when your plan's up for review, you don't have any transparency about why the decisions are being made. You don't always get reasons why a particular decision on a previous support is being taken away, even when it's been recommended. It's clear that planners don't all understand every disability. How could they? How could planners understand every single disability? But what we need is, one of the recommendations is around having planners who are specialised. Specialised in a number of ways around specific disabilities, but also specialised to help participants who've been hospitalised, who are being transitioned out. That requires a different level of knowledge and understanding. One of the things that I think will be really welcomed, and I'd urge the government to adopt this recommendation, is that where planners are rejecting the advice of a medical professional, and when the plan doesn't reflect that expert advice developed specifically for that participant, that the NDIA is required to provide written reasons for this decision at least 1 week prior to any joint planning meeting. And that gives the participant and their advocates and supporters time to digest and get their head around it. I have constituents who talk to me about feeling that they were smashed in their planning meeting because they were just blindsided by some of the decisions that were made. The recommendation number 1, that nominees have received their plans, the participant and their nominees receive a draft plan at least 1 week prior to their meeting. I mean, how can that not be happening already? It's just a disgrace. So I really welcome these recommendations, but it is up to the government to implement them, and that's the key. We need to see a government that doesn't just talk about its commitment to the NDIS, but actually demonstrates it. And this provides a way for them to show they do actually care.